Fantasy Brains!
What's up, Brainiacs? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Brains podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Cahan, and with me today is my partner, Charlie Chemers, as always. And today we're going to be bringing you some free agency fantasy football content. We are going to be going over the fantasy fallout of the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the tight ends that have all been signed or re-signed over the past few weeks. Before we continue, make sure to follow us on all of our social medias, including YouTube, especially at Leatherbrains. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And then you can check out all of our podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Like I said, though, we're going to get right into this one. Got a lot of what I would call mid free agency signings. A lot of the bigger ones were in the wide receivers, and we covered that last week. So we do have some signings and some players that could have a bigger impact on their team. So let's start out with the running backs here. I know Charlie has a lot to say about Najee Harris going to the Chargers on a 1-year, $5 million deal. Charlie, what do you think is Harris's ceiling for this season and the years after as well?
I'm really surprised that Harris got only a 1-year deal, considering he's played 17 games for 4 straight seasons in the NFL. And I mean, everyone knows the best ability is availability, and that's what Najee Harris brings to the table. If I were an NFL owner, I would want to give him a much more substantial deal, even if he's not the best running back, which he's not. But he can certainly be a role player on your team, a former first-round pick in the NFL draft. By no means did the Chargers make a mistake here. Now, what kind of sucks is everyone was circling 22, where the Chargers are drafting as one of the best landing spots for a running back in this upcoming draft. Now, what we know about Harbaugh, I'm not so sure they're going to make that selection in the first round, and will probably look for them to bring in another running back to contend with Najee Harris later in the draft. They have to, because they don't have enough depth in their running back core. So that really is kind of where we lie with Najee Harris. And now we have to decide, what is he going to bring to the table? With that being said, if they were to take, a Dylan Sampson in the 3rd or 4th round, or they go out there and, if they bring in a Quinshon Judkins, which that would be a very surprising move considering how similar of a style he would have to a Najee Harris. But I think we're going to get solid, like you said, mid even numbers from Najee Harris this year, because the volume's going to be there. He's going to get touches this year. I would be surprised if he doesn't touch the ball, 10 times a game this upcoming season. So you're going to get value. The problem is, if he does fall into that, they draft a guy to be more of a scat back, sporadic guy, give him some touches, and they only give Najee the ball 10 times a game, you're not going to get a lot of fantasy output out of that. Like, even though the Chargers offensive line and their offense is good, I think you're only going to be getting points based off of touchdowns then at that point, which still might be a valuable thing to have, but I would say that's more like RB3 or flex to backup running back territory on your fantasy teams. So, I mean, if you have him right now, I would be looking to sell off of him, because I think that the idea of him on the Chargers is a lot more enticing than it's actually going to be output wise.
Right. I mean, I will say I think it's a good 1-year deal for the Chargers. I am a little surprised that he didn't get at least like a 2-year deal. I think a
Right?
3-year deal would
Not
have been too
old.
much, just because he doesn't bring anything special to the table other than being available and being able to take a lot of carries per game. I think he could have a really solid year with the Chargers, because I don't think they're going to bring anyone in the first round, at least. Even if they bring someone in day 2, I don't know how big of an impact that guy is going to have until maybe the second half of the season. So Harris could be one of those guys that booms in the first 8 weeks of the season and
Mhm.
then becomes still solid, but not as good if somebody else is able to come in and start taking 40% of the snaps or so. Because that's what it looked like for him in Pittsburgh, is it was 50% of snaps, but every time he was in, he was getting the ball a lot. The real question is, what's his receiving upside going to be like in this offense? Because that determines a ton of value in fantasy football. If Harris is only going to catch 0 or 1 passes a game, or 1 pass a game, he's not going to have, his fantasy ceiling is limited. He would have to have 100 rush yards and a touchdown for him to put up, an RB1 performance on a week.
I'm pretty confident that he actually might come out of this, though, as the best pass catching running back on the Chargers, because unless they
Potentially.
draft like a Jaden Blue, who's the running back out of Texas that I'm really excited about, honestly, he's going to be the best receiving back on the team, Najee Harris, because I don't think there are really, really good receiving prospects in this upcoming class. I mean, they're not getting, Genty and Hampton and Henderson unless they were to take them at 22. So I do really think that Najee is going to be the best receiving back on this team. Now, what that means for him receiving wise isn't probably all that great anyways. It's probably,
Yeah,
3 catches a game max. So, but you're totally right. If he is the lead back in this backfield and they're going to give him the ball 16 to 20 times a game, you can best believe he's going to average almost a touchdown a game, and he's going to average about 70 to 80 yards per game. Like, that's just going to be solid fantasy football.
totally.
He's going to be averaging 13 to 15 fantasy points, and that's something that you're going to want on your team. So after the NFL draft, if he does come out on top, if there's not some high-end competition, he's going to be a mid to high-end RB2 this year in fantasy.
I think right now is the time you gotta sell him just because what if they also bring back Dobbins? Like, who
Yeah,
knows? Maybe they bring back Dobbins on another 1 year, give him a
Dobbins might
little
be
bit more
better.
than last year for 4 to 5 mil, and then you're going into the season, who's the starter? Because they do profile both as, like, the early down backs that can take a lot of touches in a game, so I don't know. There's a lot of question marks with that offense, but I do like Harris if he is the lead back going into the season. The Chargers are obviously a great team to, be a running back for. Harbaugh runs a good system. It's very beneficial for the running backs in terms of volume. I just don't know what his dynasty value is going to look like after this year because he could have a really solid year on the Chargers and then easily, take a bag, not a bag, but like take a 3-year $27 million deal somewhere else that isn't as good, and then it's like, yeah, he's solid, but, like, his upside isn't as high as it was when he was on the Chargers.
I mean, if he gets a 3-year deal, though, after this year, I would be pretty ecstatic if I was a Najee Harris owner. I mean, at this point in Najee's career, any extension is, lovely, because he could very easily fall apart as a fantasy player in the NFL after this season if things don't go the right way. I mean, he was only given 5.2 million, and a lot of it in the 9 mil is incentives.
I mean, it's good for confidence, but, like, I don't know how much it really matters for running backs. Like, you can kinda just plug and play running backs on a year-to-year basis. Like, I'm personally, if I had a running back, like, for example, I'll just give a player, Aaron Jones, when I traded for him this offseason, I had the assumption that whether or not he's going to the Vikings, he's gonna land somewhere. Somebody out there is gonna sign him. It's the same thing as, like, Najee. Like, Na if he has a
Najee's
good
way
year,
worse. Najee is way worse than Aaron Jones.
okay, I don't know if he's way worse, but
Yes, Aaron Jones is a stud running back for the last 8 years in the NFL. Najee Harris is a failed first-round draft pick.
okay, I would pipe down a little bit. It's not like he's a bust. Like, he's still a solid
Don't you tell me to
player.
pipe down. We're on a podcast.
Gotta pipe down a little bit here. A little
What does
bit too
this
much
do
Najee Harris
what does
disrespect.
this do for Jaylen Warren now on the Steelers?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely opens it up a lot for him now. He's the lead running back. They also brought in Kenny Gainwell on a 1-year, $2 million deal. So they have 2 receiving backs, which just makes me think that it's such a lock for them to take a running back in this draft class.
Yeah.
Um, it looks likely, more and more every single day that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Steeler, which is going to help the running backs a lot because he loves to check down to the running backs and he's going to run, a decently productive offense, at least compared to what they've had in the past. But I could see the Steelers go out there and draft a Quinshon Judkins,
I was
you
about to
know,
say his name,
type running
yeah.
back just because they need like a hard-nosed running back that
Uh-huh.
can go in between the tackles, and they need somebody who's gonna be there in round 2. Caleb Johnson, I think, would also be a good fit for them. So if they go with one of
Definitely.
those guys, Warren's upside is gonna be the same as it was last year, which is just a
No,
3rd down
higher.
back on the Steelers, which is fine because he provides a high floor every single week. He can give you 10 to 12 points, and for a bench running back, that's not bad if you have injuries or you have bye weeks. It's not a bad player to have, but his upside is never going to be higher than a low end RB2 at best.
Ooh, I mean, if the Steelers come out of the draft without drafting anybody, he's definitely up there. Now, I
Okay.
agree with you, they
Yes.
probably do take somebody, but honestly, I would say it's more likely that the Chargers draft somebody just because of the lack of other needs that the Chargers have, and then the depth that they have currently at the running back position is a lot less than what the Steelers are bringing to the table, I think. So, I don't know, we'll see how the draft falls and where the Steelers are selecting, but it's definitely an ideal spot for a running back to land, even though they do really like Jaylen Warren, even potentially more than a Najee Harris.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's go on to the Cowboys now, who did not re-sign Rico Dowdle. I was definitely very disappointed by that, especially considering they only brought in two other backs. They brought in Javonte Williams on a small deal, 1 year, $3 million, and then they brought in Miles Sanders as well. I think 1 year, 1.5 or $2 million. So all this really tells me is that these guys are solid depth pieces. It is possible that we go into the season where one of those two guys is the starter, more likely Javonte, just believing in the talent more. But I'd be shocked if the Cowboys didn't come out of this draft with the running back in the top 3 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, they might take one in their first selection, Genty or Hampton, it seems
I don't think they
possible.
will.
Right, I agree because it's the Cowboys, and I mean, Jerry Jones definitely seems like the kinda guy who, Javonte Williams, the Broncos had traded up in the draft to pick him high in the second round.
Mhm.
It really seems like Jerry Jones was like, "They traded for him, and I loved him as a prospect, a great UNC guy." So I think he just jumped at the opportunity to sign him on the cheap. This could be absolutely nothing. I mean, Dalvin Cook was on the Cowboys for some time, and we were told that Zeke was going to be used down the stretch last season, and then he wasn't at all. And so, I mean, they're going to blow smoke until Jerry Jones hits the grave. But Javonte is in a position to save his career, at least, because things did not
Totally.
go well in Denver. And Javonte honestly has a chance to compete with whatever rookie comes in. He's not going to be given the starting role if the Cowboys take one in the first 3 rounds. It's gonna be the rookie's time to shine, but he's gonna fight every chance he gets because I mean he's only on a 1 year, $3 million deal, which is next to nothing compared to what some of the other guys are getting in the NFL at this point. But I'm excited for what Javonte can bring to the table if the Cowboys make a weird Cowboy decision and decide to kind of forego drafting a running back again.
I don't think they will. I think that's
Dude, it's
just
possible.
they're signing some depth pieces. It's obviously possible. I do not think they're going to take one at 12. I think 12 has to be either O-line or receiver. I have the mock taking Matthew Golden right now at 12. So
Mhm.
it is a little more rare for a team to go if they went receiver first round and then went running back second or third. You usually don't take that many skill position players. But if you look at the Cowboys roster and how it's structured right now, their defense looks pretty solid throughout. You might be able to add a piece here and there, but offensive depth is where you really need it because you have Dak and you have CD and you have, Ferguson and Tyler Smith. You got 2 or 3 linemen, but then you
Right.
have really bad players at every other
They
position,
only
and there's
have
just
3
no
picks
depth.
in the first 4 rounds.
Right, which is tough because it's like I think those all need to go to offense or minimum 2 offense.
Right, it's tough for them to even take a running back, though, at that point. We very well could see them, being confident in a 7th or 6th round running back that they grab late because they like them and it fell, and then, Javonte is forced into the sunlight once again.
Right, and then looking at, you talked about Javonte being on the Broncos. Now the Broncos have nobody in their running back room, and they seem like a team right now that's very likely to draft a running back in the first round. Omarion Hampton is a really good option. Travion Henderson is also a very good option. I'm very high on both players. I know you are as well. But right now, it stands with Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin in the backfield. Estime profiles as the more in between the tackles, bowling ball style running back, whereas McLaughlin's the 3 down back. So I don't really think either of these guys have much value. I think if there is one that has more, I think it's McLaughlin just because he has the receiving upside and he's a more explosive player, which just bodes well a lot more in the NFL these days. Teams like speed. They like players that can break big runs and, speed through the defenses. So I'm not really excited about either of these players because I think the Broncos are going to take a running back. But if you're looking for, a guy who's a starter right now, I mean, Estime, I guess, could be your guy or McLaughlin.
Estime is my favorite pick in best ball drafts as my last selection in round 20 because I think it's a great value. Estime was drafted highly last year by the Broncos. He's Sean Payton's guy.
What
He
round
l
was he?
I thought he was a 3rd round pick last year.
Hmm.
Let me, uh,
I didn't
let me
see
make sure.
The thing about Estime is like he's good, but what's his ceiling? Like
He was
his ceiling is
taken
what scoring.
147th overall in the NFL draft, so he was a little bit later.
So he was like a late fourth.
Right. So, I mean, Like, he obviously doesn't have that high of a ceiling, but I think at least at his value right now, I think it's a good chance because he's a starting running back and it's going to be an ambiguous backfield, whether we like it or not. Like, even if Travion Henderson comes to the Denver Broncos at the pick 20th overall, I still think Audric Estime is very involved. I mean, Travion Henderson was in a shared backfield all of college. He's a faster player. He complements really well to Audric Estime. I think it would eliminate Jaleel McLaughlin's value, but
Right.
I think no matter what, I mean, if the Broncos take a Quinshon Judkins, then you'll see Jaleel and Quinshon. But if they take a Travion Henderson, you're going to see Henderson and Estime. I think there's going to be a two-person backfield in this backfield, no matter what the Broncos
Well,
decide to do.
yeah.
Just they have too much offensive potential with just the picks, the slew of picks that they have. I mean, I know we're just talking about my Broncos, but I really do think that whatever running back they draft is going to dictate which one of these two guys has the value. My money is on Estime right now because I like the Henderson pick a little bit more for the Broncos, but it certainly could be Jaleel, who is the more of a scat back, receiving back type than Audric.
It'll definitely be interesting looking, to see what the Broncos do a month from now. But looking at a couple other moves around the league, Jordan Mason got traded to the Vikings for a fifth round pick.
It's fun.
I think it's a good deal for both teams. I like Jordan Mason a lot. I think it's a really solid backup to Aaron Jones. I think Mason is a top 35 to 36 running back in this league. And so him and Jones are a really good running back combo. And this is also going to help Aaron Jones, who's 30 years old, stay healthy throughout the season, especially if, he's a little banged up. They can feed Mason for that game, a guy who's proven that he can handle a lot of touches. And then on the contrary, it also, I think, shows the belief that the Niners have in not only CMC's health for the near future, but Isaac Guerrero as their fourth round rookie last year. It just didn't make sense for them to have that many running backs on their roster. And with such a stacked running back class, you could even take one in the sixth round and probably end up with another, rookie stash. But I like this move for both teams. Don't know how much value it really has. Obviously, if Jones were to go down, then Mason becomes a potential top 12 to 15 back. So that's where he does have very high upside. I will say that.
I do think there's going to be more of a split, though, than you think. Aaron Jones last year was a dominator in the backfield. I mean, he dominated the majority of the touches, which is just not something that he's done throughout his career. I mean, he used to be a receiving back with Jamal Williams as the ground and pounder. So I do think they try to take Aaron Jones off the field a little bit more, spell him a little bit. I do think it's still Aaron Jones' backfield, but I would go out and definitely be buying Jordan Mason in a lot of places and definitely taking him in best ball drafts, especially too, because
Oh,
of
yeah.
what you mentioned, that if Aaron Jones goes down, Jordan Mason can be a really, really good running back. But I like how you mentioned that this year's running back class is jacked up. I mean, it's going to be crazy. And there's a lot of running backs right now that we've been talking about that are current starters. They're in the starting position, but it does seem really likely that the NFL team they're on drafts a running back. And a kind of dumb running back that's in that situation is Raheem Mostert on
Mhm.
the Las Vegas Raiders, who is kind of their starting running back right now. He's on a 1-year, $2 million deal. They brought him in. They still think he has some juice, even though he's like 32 years old now. But are the Raiders drafting Genty at 6th overall? And does Raheem Mostert have any value?
They are not going to draft Genty. I just don't think they will. You have Chip Kelly coming in as the new OC,
Yeah, you do.
and he's the OSU or former OSU offensive coordinator. I think he's going to take one of his guys. I think Henderson or Judkins, one of them minimum, is going to be up at their second round pick, which is the fifth or sixth pick of the
Yeah.
second round. I don't think they're going to want to take a running back with such a premium pick at 6th overall. You're going to have insane tackle prospect up. You're going to have an insane defensive tackle prospect. You're going to have any receiver that you want, any cornerback that you want. You're going to have so many options that I just don't think the Raiders are in a place to take Ashton Genty. I think there's people in the organization that want him, but I don't think that's going to fit their system. I think they can find a guy in day 2, round 2 or 3 that can complement their offense really well. And I think they'll more than likely take a receiver or a defensive player with that top pick. So Mostert is interesting. I mean, I think he's a guy that also has best ball value. I don't know really. There's not any security with him. He hasn't done anything in, 2 years now at this point, and he just gets injured pretty much every single season, but he has burner. So he could be a good best ball player. Well, he'll randomly have like 2 60-yard touchdowns and then give you a good week.
Yeah, I mean, it's Raheem Mostert, man, so he's still sticking around. I like what
It's
you're talking
crazy
about
because he
with the
had that
Raiders.
one year. He had like
Yeah,
2 years ago, he had that year where he was
18
just
touchdowns or
randomly had like
something.
20 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a fun guy. I mean, he was always relevant on the 49ers for a little while. He
Totally.
just never broke out like he did for that one season on the Miami Dolphins. But I think I agree with you about the Raiders and Genti, although I predictively I think they're going to take him. If I was their GM, I agree with you. I wouldn't take them. But the last thing I want to talk about with running backs is, do you think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to draft a running back? They brought back Kareem Hunt. They also brought in Elijah Mitchell, who's shown some pizzazz on the 49ers the last couple years as a young running back there, backing up Christian McCaffrey. Was injured last season, but they decided to bring him in. They got Kareem Hunt. They have Isaiah Pacheco. Is that enough for next season, or do they bring somebody in?
Yeah, I think they're gonna keep it at that current running back room. I could see them going a guy on day 3 of the NFL draft, but you got 3 mediocre backs. They have a lot of other needs to fill. Just getting depth at other positions is always a thing that top teams are gonna do, and that's how you stay at the top. So I think the Chiefs are gonna go out there. They're gonna keep building the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Mhm.
Maybe get some better secondary options, but I would be shocked if they took a running back. It just doesn't seem like a very Chiefs move.
Is it the CEH pick that's scaring them now?
No, but it's like at the time, CEH was like, I don't think they had as many
Yeah.
needs as they do now. Like, there are clear needs on their
Right.
team. Like, we all saw what happened in the Super Bowl. I mean, their offensive line got shredded. And I know Philly's D line was insane, but they definitely have work to do on the offensive line. And they also just traded their Pro Bowl, all pro left guard to the Bears. So they have holes to fix. I don't think one of those holes is a running back. It doesn't seem like a Chiefs pick. I could see them if they had another, good season and hit on their picks this year that they go one high next year. Um, but let's move on now to the tight ends. There's not
Mhm.
really much to talk about. Not a lot of guys signed, but a pretty big move. I'd say the biggest one in this episode that we'll talk about in my eyes is Evan Ingram going to the Broncos on a 2-year, $23 million deal. I've always been a huge Evan Engram believer, just especially in fantasy because he always catches a ton of passes. And in a PPR league, yeah, he might not be as productive in real life, but 7 catches for 45 yards is almost 12 points. And if you score a touchdown, you're having a great performance for a tight end. So I think putting Ingram in a great offense like the Broncos that's evolving, the Sean Payne offense, which really didn't feature a tight end last year, but now that he actually has a vertical threat, I'm curious to see what Ingram is going to do this year. I'm curious to see what you have to say as you're a Broncos fan, but I'm pretty excited for this move personally.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to look at where Evan Ingram came from. So he came from the Jaguars, and you see, you got young Trevor Lawrence. You've got last year they had Brian Thomas. Before that, they had like Christian Kirk. Not a lot of
Yeah.
receivers there, but just like okay receivers, okay offensive line. And then we go and we plug him into the Broncos, where he's got a head coach that's so excited to have him there. That's why they brought him in. I mean, they fought tooth and nail for this guy against the Chargers to bring in
Mhm.
Evan Ingram. And those are the game breaking choices that are going to be really important in deciding, are you going to be better than the Chargers this year? I mean, Evan Ingram might be that difference maker.
Totally.
And so you look at, you've got a young quarterback again, you've got a better offensive line than Jacksonville. You don't have insane pass catchers. So why wouldn't Evan Ingram go out there and continue this shred of dominance in terms of PPR value like you're talking about? I mean, he's not going to go out there and be catching the ball 20, 30 yards down the field for
No.
difference making first downs, but you're totally right. It makes complete sense for them to give him the ball 7 or 8 times a game, manufacture these touches. He's a fast guy. It's so easy for
Exactly.
him to get open off the line of scrimmage when he's guarded by these fat ass linebackers. So
100%.
I'm ready for Evan Ingram. I know you're hyped,
I'm just like excited because I knew he was going to land in either Denver
right?
or LA. And I was a little shocked when the Jags cut him. I think it was more of just kind of getting rid of some cap space and they liked
New
Brenton
faces.
Strange. But I really like what Ingram's going to be able to bring. They don't really have that safety blanket option in the offense right now. You like Sutton profiles more as like the deep threat and the
Mhm.
intermediate route guy, and then you have Mims who's like a gadget guy, and they'll probably bring somebody else in the draft at some point. But Engram could just be that guy that could be the safety blanket for Bo Nix. And like you said, with a great offensive line, that's going to give him even more time to run his routes and to get open with his speed. And I think he's going to be one of those guys in best ball and in redraft leagues where his upside is going to be higher than any other tight end than you could find in his range, considering he's probably going to be in the tight end 8 to 15 range, if I had to guess, because obviously there's going to be other people that are high on him. Last year, he was around the tight end 9 on Jacksonville, and
Mhm.
one mediocre season is not going to tear you down completely. But one last thing before we get on to Brenton Strange is I will say Engram is, I believe, top 3 in receptions over the past 3 years as a tight end, with Kelsey and Kittle. So he's always been catching a lot of passes. He's always been a little bit underrated. I'm definitely excited to see what he can bring. But now looking at Jacksonville, who now has Brenton Strange, who, young
Let
GM
him
James
loose.
Gladstone kind of spoke about at one of his press conferences. And he's really excited to get Strange involved in this offense and to really unleash him. And obviously, the expectation on him is nothing too crazy, but he's going to be the starting tight end in this offense. Liam Cohen's offense last year, Cade Otton had a great year, who's, a mid tight end. Brenton Strange, we don't really know what type of potential he has because of his lack of playing time. He's another guy where I could really see him increasing his value from this point on to the start of next season, where people are going to start saying, wow, we could have the starting tight end in Liam Cohen's offense, and he's only a second or third year player. So I think he's a definite buy now for me right now in Dynasty.
Yeah, he went like 61st overall, I think, in the second
Mhm.
round of the NFL draft. So he is a fantastic prospect. He's got the NFL draft capital behind him to back his name. He's got some years under his belt to hopefully explode onto the scene. This is a guy that you can get late that definitely will bring you tight end one opportunities. I could easily see him finishing as a top 12 tight end. I mean, it's not that hard to
Mhm.
finish as a top 12 tight
Right.
end, but
Mhm.
you're totally right in being excited for what Brenton Strange can bring to the table. The only other tight end that we have here is Mike Gesicki, who signed a 3-year, $25.5 million extension with the Bengals, which is honestly kind of surprising that they invested in their tight end room, considering how much money they just spent at the wide receiver position. I'm personally not the biggest fan. I think this is a fast tight end that you can use to help get your guys open, being T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I've never really liked Mike Gesicki in Cincinnati because it seems like they just always can't figure out what to do with their tight end position, and they love to have Drew Sample out on the field to block, and they just use so many different guys. So this seems a little misleading, giving him three years.
I like this deal a lot. Only 8 mil a year, or a little bit over 8. They're not paying him much. When you look at 8 mil compared to the landscape of a team, that's nothing of your total salary cap. That's what, like less than like a couple percentage points.
Yeah, but he's a
So
third of the tight end room. I mean, they use
right, but
three tight ends.
in the receiving game, he's always going to be out there. When it's, 2-minute drive, when it's third down, he's always going to be out there. And he's a great third target in this offense. I mean, you have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on the outside. You need a guy over the middle, a big target. He's a great red zone threat. And he had a really solid year last year for the Bengals. I think he's a good buy in Dynasty. I mean, I
Solid
like all these
games.
tight ends going into good offenses, but he's going to be tied for Joe Burrow now in the Bengals offense for the next few years. And every single year in my eyes, he's going to have double-digit touchdown potential.
You're goofy with that one, and I don't want to talk about Gesicki anymore. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. This move really, really excites me. Justin Fields to the Jets, 2 years, $40 million. I love this because he's going to be a great fantasy asset. You can get him late.
Totally.
There's no way that he's not good at fantasy football this year. It doesn't matter who he has around him. It doesn't matter what team Justin Fields is on. The only thing stopping Justin Fields from scoring fantasy points is a depth chart, because if he is the quarterback one in his location, he will go out there and put up quarterback one numbers regardless. He is
Totally.
going to do that. You have to have him. And I think he's even fine to go out and buy in Dynasty too, because if he goes out there and plays well, he's going to get extended. He's going to get into a new spot. I'm confident that somebody is going to keep rolling the dice on Justin Fields, at least for the next 2 or 3 years, which is all you need in Dynasty.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I don't personally think the Jets are rolling the dice with him. I think they're just using him as a bridge quarterback, which is what he'll be used for a couple of years. And that's perfectly fine because like you said, with his rushing upside, he's going to be a good fantasy quarterback no matter where he goes. If he's giving you 50 rush yards and the potential of a touchdown on top of the
Hmm.
passing that he's going to have, even if his passing numbers are low, which I think they will be in this Jets offense, I still really like Justin Fields. He's definitely going to have top 12 quarterback upside. I think as a starter last year, he was top 10 in points per game for the Steelers, but
He always
I'm
is.
really more I'm pretty sure he was QB9 last year in points
Mhm.
per game with the Steelers, but I'm more curious to see what happens with Garrett Wilson because I like this for Garrett
Wild
Wilson.
take, guys.
It is a little risky just knowing how poor of a thrower Justin Fields is for most of the time, but they were college teammates, which I do really like, and I do firmly believe in chemistry and connection and stuff like that. So I think that Wilson could be in for a big year. And this is gonna sound stupid, but
No.
Justin Fields only throws to his left side. I swear to God, watch the film. He only throws to his left. So if Garrett Wilson is lined up on the right all season, he will not get the ball. I'm being so dead serious. If you look at perfect example, Darnell Mooney was lined up on the right side of the field his entire
Wide
last year
open, yeah.
field with the Bears. He did not get any looks the entire season. You know who did? DJ Moore. And I know Moore is a way better receiver, but I don't know if they're like 1,000 yards apart in one season. I mean, I think Moore had almost 1,400 and Darnell Mooney had about 400. So,
I
um,
think you're onto a little bit of something there. You might just be a little bit of delusional Bears fan coming out, but I don't think this is good for Garrett Wilson. I know you're all giddy and excited about, oh yeah, Ohio State boys are together. No, this is gonna suck for Garrett Wilson. He needs an NFL quarterback. He needs a grown man throwing him the damn ball. Justin Fields is not that. Justin Fields will be good for fantasy. Garrett Wilson, I'm sorry, buddy, but it looks like you had your best season last year, and that was kind of disappointing, which kind of sucks because Garrett Wilson's really good. But at least this year is a no-go for Garrett Wilson. I don't think he's going to finish as a top 8 wide receiver. He might slot in at the bottom of wide receiver 1 numbers, but I wouldn't be very excited with the way that it's just organization is just managing their team. It doesn't seem like they're confident in their offensive line right now. They need another tackle. I don't think that's going to be good for the passing game, especially. So I'm very worried about what Justin Fields is going to do to this passing game, and specifically Garrett Wilson, who has just had a beatdown for his start of his career.
it's a low volume pass offense, but there's also no other weapons. And we've seen Fields have offenses similar to this. And
The Ohio State boy is a
DJ
facade.
Moore performed with him. So I'm willing to say
Right,
if
we've seen it. I agree with you.
Garrett Wilson's talented enough, he could easily go out there and have a great season.
Garrett Wilson is talented.
It's just whether or not he's going to be able to do that without catching 100 passes because he's not catching 100 passes in this Fields led offense. That's the issue with it. Now the Jets could also go out there and take a quarterback for all we know,
I think Garrett Wilson is also more of a down the field pass catcher than DJ Moore.
which is good for him.
No, I think that's tougher for Justin Fields to get him the ball. DJ Moore got a lot of close to the line of scrimmage balls. He's a fidgety guy. He's fast. Obviously, he's also a field stretcher. DJ Moore is definitely more of a
He had a
field
lot
stretcher
more
than
deep
Garrett
balls than
Wilson.
you'd
But
think.
well, yeah, I understand that Justin Fields can huck one, but I don't think he can fit it into the windows. I don't think he's accurate enough. The catches that Garrett Wilson was making last season, where he was creating these insane catches off of Aaron Rodgers' last legs in the NFL, and we'll see if we see him again. But I thought Garrett Wilson was incredible last year, and he was still put down continuously by just the situation that he was put in with the Jets, and I don't think this one's any better.
No, I agree. It's that I don't think this situation is better than it was last year now that Rodgers left because Rodgers is the perfect player for Wilson where it's quick release, quick throw off the line of scrimmage. You're not going to be able to get that with
Accurate.
Fields. It's the complete. Oh, wait. Fields' deep ball is very accurate. He just makes bad
Garrett
reads.
Wilson isn't field stretching. He's not stretching the field. He's not going like DJ Moore was good with Justin Fields because Justin Fields could throw it high and far, and then DJ Moore can go run under it, or they can do the little screen game where the Bears love to run dumb screen passes over and over again. But the way that Garrett Wilson catches the football, being an over the middle wide receiver, a cutting guy that makes clean moves is not going to work well with Justin Fields because he needs the ball, timing to be perfect, accuracy to be perfect. These are things that a pocket passer like Aaron Rodgers is capable of, even though he wasn't even that good for Garrett Wilson last year, that Justin Fields is not capable of.
Yeah, I agree. Fields is not good. He's not that good of a passer, but I do think he can be good
It was
enough to
easy in
suffice
college.
Garrett Wilson as a good fantasy receiver. We'll have to
Five
see though.
yards of
We'll see.
5 yards of separation in college is a pretty easy window to hit. But now in the NFL, it's going to be a lot more difficult for
I've
Fields.
I've seen the throws from Fields on the Bears. He's not look, he makes a lot of poor decisions and he cannot read a defense whatsoever, but I never really questioned his accuracy, at least in the deep ball, was really not an issue. I'll be completely honest. That was
Ugh,
never an issue with Fields. It's more the decision making and the other stuff. But let's move on now.
holds the ball too much.
Cover a few other moves. We have Daniel Jones signing with the Colts. Looks like he's going to compete with Anthony Richardson for the starting spot. I don't have much to say on this, but do you think that Jones has a legitimate chance to start this year?
Yeah, that's the only question that needs to be answered. And to me, the answer is Daniel Jones is going to be the starter for the Indianapolis Colts. I believe that Daniel Jones was a better prospect than Anthony Richardson. And I think that Daniel Jones will prove to everyone at the Colts organization that he should be the quarterback to at least start the season. I would be surprised if Daniel Jones doesn't get games in because Daniel Jones is a solid quarterback. We've seen him perform well on the field. Anthony Richards, yeah, we had a couple years ago. I mean, it was a
Yeah,
while ago at this
Jones is
point,
okay,
but
but I don't know why
I
you
mean,
would play. I don't really know why you'd play him consistently.
I think he brings everything to the table. He at least has the ability to open up an offense and run a full offense that Anthony Richardson
True.
it just is incapable of doing because of his accuracy issues and completion percentage problems. I mean, if Daniel Jones can go out there and complete 65% of his passes, they're going to want to use him over Anthony Richardson because you can't be an NFL quarterback and complete 45% of your passes. That
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah, completely agree.
Enough
I'm
said.
not high on Richardson at all. I think
Right.
if Jones starts, it's better for the Colts wide receivers. I don't think the Colts offense is going to be high volume for anyone this year except
I like
Jonathan
Jones.
Taylor and maybe Anthony Richardson if he's able to start, but everyone else, I mean, it's just going to be a low volume pass offense regardless of who's the
I
starter.
mean, I think Jones is a good option. I honestly think he's a good value, and I think that the New York Giants ruined him. I think they screwed him over. They didn't give him any help in their offensive line wasn't good. Their wide receivers were horrible. I mean, they didn't give him anything to work with. I think that he's given an opportunity here in Indianapolis to make a name for himself. I think he knows what
Right.
he's worth. I think he knows what he's capable of. I think we will see a solid season out of Daniel Jones this season.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't know if we'll see that, but he definitely could be better than Richardson. Looking at some other moves, Kenny Pickett going to the Browns could compete for the starting spot there, depending on
Yeah,
who else they bring
backable.
in. But I mean, Kenny Pickett, we all know what he brings to the table. He is not very good. Don't think we need to spend too much time on him. And then looking at Russell Wilson to the Giants, who recently signed a 1 year, $21 million deal. I like this move for the Giants. I think it's clear that
Mr.
with
Unlimited.
their pick at number 3, they're most likely not gonna take a quarterback, and they're gonna get a generational player in either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, which I think is the 100% right decision. Now they could
Mhm.
100% go out there and still take Shedeur Sanders if he's on the board, but I don't think they will anymore, and I think everyone out there who is a Malik Neighbors owner was salivating at the fact that Jameis Winston was gonna be their quarterback, just
Sure
for
could
Russell
be.
Wilson to be their quarterback, which I think does cap Neighbors' value a lot just because I don't Russ is just not great at producing high-end fantasy receivers.
He's just not great, period, end of
Well, yeah, he's
sentence.
not, but you can be not great and produce players in fantasy. Like Jameis Winston isn't
Yeah,
great, but
that's
he
fair.
produces players.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's 1 year deal. I don't like
Yeah.
spending too much time talking about Russell Wilson. I think this is his last chance at, a starting spot in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. But moving on to our last player of the episode, which is arguably the biggest one as well. Sam Darnold signing a 3 year, $100 million deal with Seattle. We talked about the Seahawks offense, in the last episode with the new Cooper Cup signing, but I do like this move for Darnold. I think he's proven, at least last year, that he can go out there and at least be a productive fantasy quarterback. I don't know how good the Seahawks are going to be. I don't know how Darnold's career is really going to
Not good,
finish,
but
but I do think that Darnold could go out there and have a pretty solid season as a quarterback too in Superflex. I think that he's going to be slinging the ball. I think that the Seahawks offense could be decent, but he could lose some production due to just the volume of rushing that I think they will have in that offense.
yeah, I mean, I think the Seahawks are gonna get last place in their division this upcoming season, but that has nothing to do with this move. Just talking about this move in particular, I think the Seahawks made a great
I agree.
decision and how to run their team. I mean, going from Geno to Sam Darnold and a third round pick, I think is a
100%.
great move. They also get him locked into this like 3-year, $100 million deal, but it's really only like a 1-year guaranteed deal, so they
Mhm.
can move on or use him as a
Yep.
bridge quarterback if they need to. I think it puts the Seahawks in a great position. I don't like what they're doing with the rest of their roster, but I love this. I don't think Sam Darnold's going to have the best fantasy season, because I don't think the touchdowns are going to be very
Right.
high. I'm just really worried about the output of this offense in general and just their explosiveness. But Sam Darnold's going to be okay. He's going to be a bottom to mid-tier quarterback too, which is definitely going to be valuable in super flexes. I don't think Sam Darnold's career is over, even if he has a bad season. So I do think that this is okay, but the Seahawks probably aren't going to be that good.
No, I agree. I think they'll finish ahead of the Cardinals still. I think the Seahawks still could put together a pretty solid season if they're able to build the O-line and then kind of runs an offense similar to what they had in the Marshawn Lynch days and just kind of ground and pound. But while I do like Cooper Kupp and JSN to have a lot of receptions, I don't think that their yardage numbers are going to be anything
Right.
crazy high. And that's where I agree with you that the upside for Darnold as a player, he's not going to be going out there and throwing for a lot of 300-yard games anymore like he was with the Minnesota Vikings, where you have Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, who are perennial deep threat players. So I'd say this move is mid. I like it for Seattle. I like Darnold in a Seahawks uniform. I think it's going to be pretty cool. And I'm happy that he's getting an opportunity to shine and get a starting spot. So I like Darnold. I think it's a good move. And that'll wrap up this episode of the free agency fallout. We really hope you all enjoyed. We're going to be coming out with a lot of content soon. We got an Omarion Hampton film review dropping soon. We also have posted our Travion Henderson and Matthew Golden film reviews on our YouTube channel. So definitely check it out.
Wow.
Leatherbrains Podcast, and then all of our socials at Leatherbrains. Again, leave us some comments. Let us know what else you guys would like us to talk about. We really enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next week for another episode. That'll be TBD, and we're out.
3, 2, 1.
Got a blast!
Thanks for checking out the Fantasy Brains. Don't miss next week's episode, Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. See you next week, Brainiacs.